Before the February 25th, 2023 presidential election, there was a somewhat hope-rising feeling in the air as many Nigerians planned to use their votes to reclaim the country from the selfish and non-performing politicians who, have held the country hostage, and its development dwarfed since the return of democracy in 1999. Today, that feeling seems to be replaced with anger and frustration, as many believe that the results as announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, did not reflect what they voted for. As expected, the parties and their presidential candidates that believe their mandates were stolen have since gone to court to challenge the results, and all eyes are now on the judiciary. That fear that the judiciary cannot be trusted is also a reason to ask if the judiciary can save the country, as both presidential candidates of the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party are currently in court to challenge the declaration of the All Progressives Congress presidential candidate as the winner of the February 25th poll. These is the discussion. These issues are the conversations we're going to be having this morning. And we have our guest in the studio, Barrister Jide Ologun. Good morning, sir. You're welcome.
Good morning.
Always good to have you on the show. Good morning.
Thank you.
Well, we know that the elections are over now, whether the main or the supplementary elections, they're all rounded off now. And all eyes are now on the judiciary as to what will happen or who decides who takes office after all of the elections. And we have parties already in court filing petitions as to their grievances concerning the elections. But the question is, why this slow process? You have, legal luminaries like yourself, SAN Olisa Agbakoba, saying that this process should be hastened in a way that before May 29, when we expect the president-elect to be sworn in, there's a conclusion of all of the processes. Of course, we know that the court has about 180 days in total to conclude the case, but he is saying that this process could be hastened up so that before May 29, it is concluded, and then we don't have a president in office while there are still aggrieved parties as to the authenticity of his election.
At least we have about 5 parties now that have listed their petitions. And if you look at section 132, subsection 7 and subsection 8 of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended, it says that your petition must come within 21 days of the declaration of its results. And the respondent has another 21 days to
reply.
And after that, you need to exchange processes. And so sometimes when we talk of the judiciary, you have the involvement of the bench and the bar. And as we speak now, not all the parties who are interested have filed in what they should file, in terms of response. And of course, you cannot stampede the bench to proceed in a hush-washy manner. Recall the case of the Naira swap, that the Supreme Court had to join all the other stakeholders that were interested. Nigerians were like, no, you have to go ahead. But at the end of the day, the Supreme Court still achieved the result, which was to bring the old Naira notes back into circulation and try to bring a relief to the citizens. So sometimes it's not how, and if you imagine that we have like over 100 lawyers involved in this matter, representing different parties, and they have to bring in different approaches. So it's, and like a wise man said, if it's worth doing at all, it's worth doing very well. And again, another argument is that whether the president-elect is sworn in or not, it can still be removed depending on the final decision of the court. And don't forget also that this matter still has the mileage of going all the way to the Supreme Court. So it's not just as if the election petitions will decide and that is final.
Which is the fear of a lot of Nigerians, that this whole hog of process that the judiciary usually takes when it comes to deciding who gets what is usually not justiciable, because they are saying that if we have to wait, for instance, 5 years and all of that, the president-elect remains in office. So if eventually the court comes out to say, oh, well, this party shouldn't be the party in office, it should be another party, he has spent the 5 years in office.
It's a collective responsibility. I just told you now. Let's assume that we even have just 5 political parties in court. They have their different lawyers. And if lawyers decide to delay the processes, and sometimes you need to step into the shoes of the judges. We have situations where we were worried that no, this thing should be faster, but the judge will tell you a part of your action at the trial level will be counted upon at the appellate level. So when you are supposed to give time to someone to marshal his case very well, and you know, so it's a sensitive, and that's why you have levels of interventions. You start from the petition level, you move to the appeal, you move to the Supreme Court. Look at the case of Osun State. At the election, exactly, his victory was upturned, though not unanimously, but at the appellate level, he's been restated. So whether the former governor will proceed to the Supreme Court is another issue. So, and it's all about who is affected. Almost all the parties that are petitioning have senior advocates and legal luminaries in their team, and the court is not the one to prove your case. You are the one to prove your case. And surprisingly, there will be a lot of elements that will be thrown in. For example, even at the preliminary level, APC already came out that Peter Obi was not even a member of Labour Party where he contested.
But Barrister, we don't want to delve into
I
all
know,
of that.
I'm just telling you
so you know
that a lot of surprises will come. So you find their evidences, their things like that. So sometimes it's not by media reporting of what is going on. There are deeper things. INEC is also a party to this.
Yes.
And INEC will have to present their own case. And the bench will look at all this, come to a decision. And like I said, when the former governor of Osun State wasn't satisfied with the decision, the governor in Sebadeleke was not satisfied with the tribunal upturning his victory. He proceeded to the appeal court. And then if let's just imagine that he did not proceed to the appeal court. So, and that is the process of justice. So what we need to call for basically is a holistic approach to rebranding our system in the country. And again, some of us even expect that we come to a point in time where you don't even need judicial interventions when it comes to elections.
Exactly.
And because in 2015, for instance, which stands out as one of the elections where we didn't have political judicial battles,
because of the concession of the former president.
Former president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, considered and congratulated the winner, the declared winner, even though a member of the party was contending, Rubebe, you are partisan, you are this and that. So again, this is what we need to let our wonderful audience realize. If the parties don't go to the judiciary has no business in interfering or intervening, because I've heard people say judiciary is the problem of society, and the judiciary has a role to play. There are 3 arms of government. The legislative arm makes the laws, the judiciary interprets, executive executes. So if you don't come to judiciary, they will carry out other functions. You see, if the state did not go to Supreme Court had no business getting involved in Naira's war. The justices there should at least have access to money by virtue of their influence to spend and keep life going. So, and this is what we need to realize, because I've heard people say they don't have trust in the judiciary. If you don't have trust in the judiciary, then maybe talks should resolve the crisis. So
but
maybe
barrister,
if someone
isn't
is
it
sworn in,
worrisome that now what we have is a case of the judiciary deciding who takes office, who leads the people? And that's because we've not been able to fine-tune our electoral process to a point where the people's vote eventually counts.
the law is settled that where you have this kind of conflict, you go to the judiciary. It's part of the electoral law that when final results are declared, if you are not satisfied, you go to the election tribunal. It's there. So maybe what we need to do is go back to the National Assembly. And the National Assembly, the mandate in Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended is to make laws for the peace, order, and good governance of Nigeria. And like I said, there are many beautiful eateries around town. But if I don't come there to buy food, will they now just bring food to my house and say, oh, you must eat? No. If no party has gone to the election tribunal, there is nothing to adjudicate over. So the judiciary is an institution that is positioned there to interpret the laws, you know, receive the evidences, the witnesses, and engage these things to resolve the matters. And of course, you have to comply by the decisions of the court. You know, I really enjoyed, and we discussed it here, the case of the Naira swap and the transformation of the image, our currency, when the argument started. And that's why I do not really envy the judiciary that no, you cannot sue CBN in Supreme Court, you have to go through. These things are right. If you want to sue CBN, you go to the Federal High Court. But the states under, you know, under the Constitution can sue the Federation. And the Supreme Court is the court of first and final jurisdiction in respect of that. And the states went to Supreme Court to sue on a policy of the Federation carried out by CBN in an agency capacity, so to say, in court.
Which of course created a lacuna, even in that case eventually, because there were talks about how the CBN wasn't involved in all of the court process.
Exactly. But the president, as a master of agents in court now, CBN, also proceeded to give instruction. He assumed responsibility to CBN. And the Supreme Court is saying, okay, if we cannot tell CBN to release money directly, you that gave them instruction, step in. So, and that is, and like I keep saying, you can imagine that we don't have the judiciary. So what happens? So the talks of each party is now, we now go to the state house. Anyone that is sworn in, they beat him out, they put their own forcefully. So he's part of what we have. So by and large, I think in the journey of this democracy, we should just be improving on our systems and things like that. And again, let me say this without any bias. We've had different complaints. All the parties have complaints across board. So it's when you now come to court, you bring your evidence, you bring what you have to be reviewed, you be given the opportunity to defend. I came out with a revelation. One of the parties that went to INEC, you know, and it was as if INEC was not forthcoming. And INEC told the team of senior advocates that visited that, come, any material you need now, we can give you now if you want them. So that is why I'm advising, let's calm down and see how these are unfolding. At the end of the day, if not at the tribunal level, at the appellate level, or finally we get to the Supreme Court.
Which might take longer than we expect.
Since 1963, Supreme Court remains the highest court in the land. So when Supreme Court decides, where do you go? You go to God.
Okay, but what would you say, because in the history of court cases arising from elections and their results, at least by now hearing would have started, what would you say is delaying hearing in this situation? And there's been a lot of conversation, you even mentioned it, how that a lot of people have lost, you know, trust in the judicial system. How as a lawyer, how would you say that, okay, you and your colleagues will be able to begin to restore trust, you know, among the populace?
It's up to lawyers and the bench, really.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not easy. There are times you get to court and you are prepared to go on, and all you have before the court is a letter from your colleague claiming that his mommy's elder sister is in coma. So because of that, he cannot be in court. And like I said earlier, if the judge now says, I'm going to throw out this case, that becomes a basis that I have told you, whether it's genuine or not, that the reason why I'm not in court. So it's what we should all come together to fine-tune. But then, like I said, there is much that can still be done by the National Assembly. Look at the Electoral Act. After the amendment, we had clauses introduced that political appointees must resign before getting actively involved. And we are implementing these things. You know, we've escalated to the case of engaging beavers and IREV and things like that. So when we escalate, and one of the beauties of it is that within 180 days, election matters should be rounded up. But how smoothly, and the moment these hearings start, it can be day, after day, back to back, bumper to bumper, but it still depends on the stakeholders in court. So, and where you have over 100 lawyers before the trial.
So what extends it? If it's supposed to be 180 days for the court to conclude on the case, what extends it beyond a year? We've seen cases that last several years, donkey years, before they eventually conclude.
Those are other cases. It's because of that this introduction of 180 days came in. But interestingly, within these 180 days, the president-elect would have been sworn in, governor-elect would have been sworn in, but we have seen National Assembly members removed. We have seen different kinds of.
So does this mean that within 180 days, that's about 6 months, does it mean that this would be concluded and we wouldn't have some unnecessary extensions?
Yeah, we expect so.
What are the factors that could lead to unnecessary extensions?
I've told you. You have the bench and the bar. It's just like asking, what are the factors that can lead to citizens having about 40-something trillion naira of their money stuck in the e-transaction window? Because the facilities to carry out the cashless economy is not there. Ideally, under the principle of cashless economy, your transfer is successful. In the US, you want to go to the ATM, you drive through. It is expected that you slot in your card, you pick your cash, you move, the next person goes in there. So if these facilities are there, there are a lot of, I just told you now, we don't have all the time to begin to mention the names of parties. Some parties have fully filed their papers, some are still battling to exchange papers and things like that. And like I said, if the court now rushes to say, it becomes another issue. So it's not easy to be an umpire. It's just like when you have a referee on the field. Sometimes when the referee brings out a yellow card, he almost earns a slap from even the one who has erred. And like I said, the court is a resolution place. I saw people who were accredited not allowed to vote. And the other part, I saw people who were not even accredited and people were holding their thumbs to. So you bring all these evidence things beyond the media parades. Okay, you scored 98 here. How did you achieve? Is it because there are no other parties there? Okay, you claim that this was rigged, but your candidate that won in the National Assembly, that one was not rigged. These are issues that will come. And at the end of the day, the judiciary will come to a decision. And like I'm
glad you mentioned the Osun State scenario where we saw Adeleke reclaim his mandate by going to the appeal court. It wasn't the same in Imo State where we saw Emeka Ihedioha lose his mandate to Hope Uzodinma, who was in the 4th position. And that has raised a lot of questions and controversies when it comes to the judiciary, with some people asking how dependable is the judiciary? We've seen a lot of compromise when it comes to judicial process in Nigeria. We've seen invasion of the judicial justices' houses. For instance, Mary Odili, whose Abuja residence was invaded last year, October. All of these cases are raising more questions, more dust as to how dependable is the judicial process in Nigeria.
the questions will always be there. But how dependable are our universities with all the strike? But students must go to school. So it's a global concern for us. The case of Imo State, lawyers argued it. It wasn't a pleasant one. But then, by virtue of the law, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. So even if the Supreme Court errs, the Supreme Court cannot upturn herself in respect of that case.
Wow.
But in a subsequent matter, you may correct the error. And I'm not saying that the Supreme Court erred. So these are issues. So how you see, you have a wide space to amend your laws and ensure that you move towards the perfect scenario. I cannot say we have a perfect scenario in Nigeria. And that's why most of the time I push the ball to the National Assembly, where we have 109 senators and 360 House of Reps members to sit down and make laws for the peace, order, and good governance of the nation, you see. And if the executive is also diligent enough to execute, and we have the judiciary committed, why not? We can fine-tune our space. You know, look at what is going on in the US, where Donald Trump
it's been questioned.
Exactly.
That's the classified document.
Exactly.
But let's, because we have to wrap up shortly, let's look at the autonomy of the judiciary, because that has been a major crux for discussion, especially when it comes to how independent they are in making decisions in the court. Several times we've seen industrial actions. Jusun had one recently talking about how they need the judiciary to be autonomous. What role do you think that plays, especially in helping? We see that happen even with INEC. The fact that the head of INEC is being appointed by the president, and we know the case of he who pays the piper dictates the tune. What role do you think that plays in affecting the judicial process?
Autonomy is good, and I believe the president has even, in some of the recent amendments, granted that. But even with the autonomy, whoever wants to be
He's granted the autonomy of judiciary.
We have the autonomy of the judiciary then, and some other bills he has signed. But even with the autonomy, you talk of local government and everything, if there is no sincerity of purpose, the autonomy on its own cannot deliver justice. And that is why we need to upscale our system and ensure there are consequences. Permit me to bring in the most recent crisis we have in the country, the Adamawa case, where the resident electoral commissioner proceeded to announce
a winner
result, even when results were still expected from about 10 local governments. And the commissioner of police escorted him there, issues. And thank God, INEC nullified all those pronouncements. And again, beautifully, Binani rushed to court to seek an ex parte order, and the court threw that out. So the judiciary here, that no, you cannot be part of this ugly situation. So judiciary again, Binani going to the judiciary saying, no, you cannot be involved. So if nobody goes to the judiciary will be busy with other things. You see, maybe civil matters and matters, or, so these are the issues. And the point we are making now is that, and that is why many are calling for the thorough investigation and prosecution of the stakeholders in this Adamawa Gate matter. If there are no consequences, it should be difficult to re-engineer this country. So if I can just step on the rule of law, behave in an untoward manner, and nothing happens to me, others will want to do it. And the big question I ask is that, could that wreck have done that in North Korea, for instance?
North Korea. Okay, hopefully we'll be able to answer that question the next time we have you on the show. Thank you so much, Barrister Jide, for coming on iBrand Daybreak this morning. It was really amazing having this conversation with you.
Thank you. So I just want to advise you, please, let's calm down. Everything will be
keep our fingers crossed.
Exactly. And we pray for good governance in Nigeria eventually.
A big amen to that.
Amen. All right, it is still iBrand Daybreak. When we come back from this quick break, the show will continue. I think we're going to be having a love doctor in the house.
The Cupid talk.
Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.